Sony have a huge lineup of lenses, but what if I told you there are still some missing? These are the lenses I think Sony needs to release next that don't exist yet, but they might in the future. As a heavy prime lens user myself, let's start with primes. It's no secret that one of my favorite and most used lenses is the 35mm f1.4 GM. So it makes sense that one of the main lenses I'm wanting from Sony is a 35mm f1.2. There are a couple that exist out there. You have the new Sigma 35mm f1.2 Mark II that you can use on E-mount. I actually own the original Mark I version and have used it for a couple of photo shoots as you're seeing here. There's also the Viltrox 35 f1.2, which I recently reviewed, and I'll leave that video linked down below if you want to hear my thoughts on that lens and see some more results. The one that really stands out to me though is the Nikon 35mm f1.2. This lens is so stunning. There are virtually no downsides to it. It produces the dreamiest looking photos. They're sharp, beautiful colors and contrast. I'm always super excited when I get to use it, so I would love to see Sony make a GM version of this lens. Next, I know this is a lens a lot of us are waiting for, so when are we going to see, if ever, an 85mm f1.2 from Sony? This would be my dream lens pairing, 35 and 85 f1.2. The latest 85 is the f1.4 GM2, which I did upgrade to as I like that it's a bit smaller and lighter than the Mark I that I originally owned. An f1.2 version of these lenses is definitely going to be larger and heavier, but I think it's worth it for that extra dreaminess factor. Let me know if you ever think Sony are going to give us this lens in the comments. Let's talk about more telephoto lenses for us portrait photographers. The 135 f1.8 GM is now starting to get a little old as it was released in 2019. To be honest, this lens is not showing its age though and still holds up today in image quality and performance, but I would love to see an updated version for this lens because it would be great for it to have a faster aperture of f1.4. This footage you're watching is from my review of the Sigma 135 f1.4 that's available for E-mount and L-mount. I'm using the L-mount version here on the Lumix S1R2, and this lens is absolutely gorgeous. It produces some incredibly creamy, dreamy images, and we just happen to have the most magical lighting to work with on the day too. I think this is a lens we'll definitely see from Sony eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later. By the way, if you want to learn how to take portraits with natural light the way I do, I have an online workshop with brand new, never seen before footage where I teach you everything I know about getting the best results with natural light, and no other equipment is needed except your camera. I take you through a photo shoot with all kinds of lighting, including harsh midday sun. I'll leave a link down below for you. Another unique portrait lens Sigma has that I'm surprised Sony hasn't made yet is the 105mm f1.4. I know there are a lot of photographers out there who love using a 135 for portraits, but for me personally, it's not my first choice portrait lens. I tend to use 135 when I want to create distance between myself and the subject, so during a wedding ceremony, for example, so I don't have to be in everyone's way. But when I'm doing a one-on-one portrait session, I find being far away from my subject makes things a little bit difficult as you need to shout for them to hear you need a large location to be able to work with this focal length, and I find I lose my flow as I have to physically move around too much to capture different compositions. For this reason, a 105 is such a good compromise. You still get that extra compression compared to an 85, you get more depth of field than a 100 or 90mm f2.8 macro lens, which are Sony's current lens options if you want to shoot at this focal length, and you don't have to juggle such a long focal length like 135. Since we are speculating a bit here, I also wonder if Sigma are going to release an updated version of their 105 since the original one hasn't been for sale for a while. I have a dedicated review about this lens, so I'll leave a link down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that one. Let's move on to zooms next. Sony recently released the 28-70 f2 and 50-150 f2. So does that mean they will also release a 16-35 f2 to finish off the trio of zooms to cover all the focal ranges with a fast aperture? I own the 16-35 f2.8 GM2. This is such a fantastic lens to use for travel, landscape photography, and videography especially. For that reason, I have to say, I don't think there is a huge use case to have a wide-angle zoom with an aperture of f2, as for those genres of photography and video, you wouldn't really be using such a shallow depth of field. It makes sense with the 28-70 and 50-150, as these are more so portrait and wedding style lenses, so I'm not too sure we're going to see this release from Sony. So while it's great to have high-end, fast zooms like those, I also want to see a smaller version that's more friendly for everyday shooting and travel. We can look at Tamron's 35-150 f2-2.8, which is an incredibly popular lens and for good reason. This focal length covers such a wide variety of shooting styles while also producing high-quality imagery with smooth bokeh. I think it would be great if we had another version of this lens with a constant f2.8 aperture to keep the size and weight down instead. Tamron did also recently release the 35-100 f2.8. Again, I'll have my review linked down below, but it would be nice to see it with a bit more reach on the long end. Sony were slowly releasing G lenses, including the 16-25 f2.8 and 24-50 f2.8, but those came out around 2 years ago now, and we haven't really had anything G related since then. I think a good inclusion to round off those zooms could be the 70-200 f2.8 G. I know they have a couple of f4 telephoto zooms in their G line, but I want to specifically see a faster aperture zoom at that more affordable G price point compared to GM. Speaking of G lenses, what about their primes? So up until now, a lot of the lenses I'm hoping and waiting to see from Sony would turn out to be a bit more on the expensive side, but Sony haven't released affordable lenses in a while, which I would really like to see make a comeback. And what I'm getting at with the G lenses, I want Sony to focus on small lenses again. Back when the A7C Mark I was released, Sony also announced a trio of primes, the 24-2.8, 40-2.5, and 50 f2.5G, but this was about 5 years ago now. I thought this was going to be a new series of lenses, but we never got anything more than those. Sony also have a collection of f1.8 prime lenses that have not seen an update in a very long time. I'm talking about the 35 f1.8, the 50 f1.8, and 85 1.8 lenses, which are all sub $1,000. I've used all these lenses before, and they're not bad lenses at all. They can still be used to this day and are a really good, affordable option for photographers. But with all the advancements Sony have made with their lenses over the years since these were released, it would be great to see these as updated G lenses in the future. One of the big asterisks when it comes to these lenses though is that while it would be great to see them with new optics, the price needs to stay on the low end. Talking about budget-friendly lenses, something that comes to mind is how Canon recently released a very affordable 45mm f1.2. While it's not your usual f1.2 quality that springs to mind, it's such a fun, quirky, and budget-friendly lens for photographers to start off with or add to their kit. There's also the new Lumix 40mm f2, which is, again, another small and really fun lens while producing great results. So I want more of this in Sony's future. I have one more lens that Sony needs to update, and I think we'll see this one soon. This is one of my most used Sony lenses that I've owned for a really long time, and I don't think you'll be able to guess what it is. And this is a sneak peek here with some of the footage I've captured to give you a couple more seconds to try and figure out what it is. It's the 28mm f2. This is such a fantastic lens and produces great results at an affordable price. I used to use this lens a lot for travel photography and videography, including vlogging. I also used it for wider group shots at weddings or when I wanted to have a small lens on me for daily photography. While I don't take it out on location as much as I used to anymore, as I have bought newer lenses now for those genres, this 28 still gets used all the time as my webcam setup and filming YouTube videos in my office. What I would like to see updated in this lens are mainly the speed. I want an aperture ring on it and possibly a faster aperture. So an f1.8 that's a bit sharper and faster but at a higher price point to have some options against the affordable f2 version that we already have available. Let me know what lens you'd love to see in the comments.